You thought it was love, the way your heart raced, the way you needed them. But love doesn't hook you like that. Not by the throat, not by the wound. What if it wasn't love, but a trauma bond? What if the chemistry was just your childhood screaming for resolution? Psychologists call it emotional addiction. You crave the one who cuts you, because pain is what your nervous system learned to call home. Carl Jung warned us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. You didn't fall in love. You fell into your past. You feel a rush when they text you back, a collapse when they go silent. And somehow, that collapse feels familiar. That's not love. That's a trauma bond. A trauma bond is formed through repeated cycles of emotional abuse and intermittent validation. It's the hook buried in uncertainty. The pull of someone who wounds you, then pretends they didn't. In psychology, it mimics real intimacy. But underneath the chemistry is chaos. Your body becomes addicted to the cycle. You confuse danger for passion. This is what experts call emotional addiction. The brain releases dopamine during reconciliation and withdrawal during rejection. So, you stay because your nervous system believes that survival is love. Carl Jung didn't use the term trauma bonding, but he saw the trap. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. In trauma bonds, you don't chase connection. You chase resolution. You're not in love with them. You're in love with the hope they'll finally heal what they broke. Carl Jung said, "We never see people as they are. We see them as we are, as our pain remembers." In trauma bonds, this distortion becomes deadly. You're not in love with them. You're in love with what they represent. A familiar ache, a ghost from your past dressed in new skin. This is Jungian projection. It's the psyche's way of outsourcing what it cannot face. You project your shadow, your suppressed fears, desires, and wounds onto the person who mirrors them. And when that mirror shatters, you don't just lose a partner. You lose your illusion of healing. Jung warned of this trap through his idea of the anima and animus, the inner feminine and masculine forms we all carry. When those archetypes are wounded, we seek them in others. We try to fix our inner fractures by loving someone who feels like the piece we lost. But the truth? You're not seeking a soulmate. You're seeking the shape of your original pain, hoping this time it won't abandon you. And the person you're with, they're not your future. They're your wound, projected into flesh. If something in you stirred while listening, trust it. These aren't just ideas. They're fragments of a truth you've always carried. Subscribe to Deeper Rewind for more unspoken insights. The kind that don't just explain, but remember you. Why do we chase those who tear us apart? Why do we stay, even when we know it's killing something inside us? Because pain is predictable. And in a world that abandoned us early, predictability feels like love. Emotional trauma and attraction are more connected than we think. Your brain memorizes the chaos of childhood, the silence, the volatility, the shame. It stores it, not as warning, but as blueprint. So when you meet someone who triggers that same unpredictability, who pulls you close, then disappears, it feels like home. Not because it's safe, but because it's familiar. Psychologists call this subconscious attraction to pain. It's not chemistry, it's survival dressed as desire. And what does your nervous system learn? That if you can make them stay, if you can win them back, maybe this time you won't be left behind. That's not love. That's the echo of childhood trauma in relationships, calling you back into the fire so you can finally prove you're worthy of warmth. You didn't want love. You wanted relief. Relief from the silence. Relief from the abandonment. Relief from the feeling that you were never enough. And somewhere deep down, you believed they could fix it. That's the lie of the trauma bond. It doesn't just tie you to a person. It ties you to a promise that if they stay, if they finally choose you, you'll be healed. But that's not healing. That's repetition. You're not loving them. You're trying to rescue your inner child through them. You're hoping their affection will erase your shame. Carl Jung called this the compulsion to repeat. We are drawn again and again to the same pattern because the psyche craves closure. But in doing so, you mistake pain for purpose. You mistake toxic attachment for intimacy. You call it love because it hurts like home. But they can't save you because you're not chasing them. You're chasing a version of you that never felt held. Breaking a trauma bond isn't about willpower. It's about awareness. Because what you're really breaking isn't a relationship. It's a pattern. Carl Jung said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." That's the work. That's the escape. Not through revenge, not through rebound, through radical self-revelation. This is where shadow work begins. The honest, brutal process of looking into the mirror and saying, "I kept choosing pain because it felt familiar." You ask, what wound am I replaying? Who did they remind me of? What part of me still thinks I need to suffer to be loved? These aren't just questions. They're keys that unlock the door between your unconscious pain and your conscious power. Shadow work in relationships means seeing yourself, even the parts that flinch, chase, collapse. You reclaim them. You hold them. You say, "We don't need them to survive anymore." That's how the trauma bond breaks, not by hating them, but by choosing not to abandon yourself ever again. Leaving doesn't feel like freedom at first. It feels like dying. Because you're not just walking away from a person. You're detoxing from chaos. Emotional withdrawal is real. The silence after a trauma bond is louder than the abuse ever was. Your body shakes. Your mind pleads. Your heart tells you to run back. Not because you love them, but because you were programmed to survive through suffering. This is the grief no one talks about. The grief of losing a fantasy. The grief of letting go of who you hoped they would be. But the grief is sacred because it means you're finally seeing clearly. You're not healing from love. You're healing from the wound that mistook pain for affection. And every day you stay away, you reclaim the pieces of you that once begged to be chosen. You're not broken without them. You're becoming whole without their chaos. Carl Jung didn't warn us about love. He warned us about its illusion. He saw that what we call love is often our own pain in disguise. You weren't choosing them. You were choosing the story you hoped would finally make you whole. But healing doesn't come from someone else's validation. It comes from stepping into the silence and not abandoning yourself there. Jung said, "Where love rules, there is no will to power." But in trauma bonds, power always rules. One controls, the other clings. That's not love. Love is not what keeps you attached. Love is what sets you free. So if it hurts to let go, good. That means you're finally holding the one person who was missing all along. You.